Hello and welcome to The Inside Edge, Cricket Leinster's new video podcast. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kate. And it's great to be welcoming you to the first episode of this series, which will give you an insight into the minds of some different sporting people.
And make sure to let us know what you think of the new series on all of our social media outlets at Cricket Leinster. And for the first episode, we are talking about the art of captaincy. Captaincy obviously so crucial in many different team sports, from dealing with influential players to creating that good team atmosphere and dealing with senior players and junior players alike.
And for today, we've assembled a brilliant lineup of different captains from different sports. And first up is George Dockrell, who's captain of Leinster Lightning. Welcome, George.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
George also has amassed over 250 caps for Ireland across multiple formats. And in 2018, George came back from Somerset to captain Cricket Leinster.
And we're also delighted to be joined by Pearl Slattery. Pearl is the current Shelbourne women's football captain. Great to have you on, Pearl.
Thanks a million.
And Pearl obviously was captain of Shelbourne last year when they had a very dramatic win in the Women's National League in 2021. I'm sure you're looking forward to captaining Shelbourne again this year, looking to retain that title and into the Champions League.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's a big season for us now. We obviously have to try and retain the title. The cup competition is there, and then Champions League to be added in to the mix of that. So look, that's why you want to win a league title the previous year, to have this busy schedule, and that's why you play. So looking forward to it.
And last but not least, we have Sinead Aherne, Dublin captain. Sinead has made her debut in 2003 for Dublin. She has won 4 All-Irelands. She has captained Dublin to 3 All-Irelands. She's been on the All-Star list multiple times. And she also has won the club inter-championships with Sills this year. Welcome, Sinead.
Thanks very much.
I suppose we'll start off trying to get a background between the three of you into how you've got into your respective sports and maybe a few early memories and an early story. Sinead, we might start off with you, how you got into football.
Yeah, I suppose a similar story to maybe a lot of girls growing up. I had an older brother who kind of, I suppose, headed down to do the GAA when he was younger. Didn't really stick with it, but kind of stuck for me and joined, I suppose, kind of summer camps, early kind of leagues like that for kids when I was playing. And I suppose got involved in some of the earliest girls' teams that were created in St Sylvester's Club growing up. So it was kind of a group of girls that got involved through school and kind of carried that on up to the club.
And then George, for you, what would be one of your first memories of cricket?
Yeah, I think for myself, it was my dad bringing me down to his club, which was YMCA in Sandymount. Going down to watch him play and be around that environment made me want to join Leinster, which was my local club in Rathmines at the time. So yeah, definitely a family connection there.
And Pearl, for yourself, getting into football?
Yeah, look, just since an early age, my mum always said I just always had a football with me. So it was more so I made the decision really what sport I wanted to play. And look, I ended up playing out on the streets and then was picked up by a boys team and then eventually played with a girls team. So for many years I played, winter football with the boys and girls football with the summer, and then just continued. And obviously that developed then into National League football, and 32 now, still going. So every year I say it's me last year, but the younger girls, in fairness, keep me young. So I've got to keep playing as long as I can.
And this podcast obviously about captaincy. George, when you were growing up playing through teams, playing for Leinster and stuff like that, did you ever have a feeling that you were going to become a captain? And were there any captains when you were much younger that, I suppose, when you were more impressionable, that you really learned from and learned from going forward to now?
Yeah, I think, growing up playing cricket, I always thought a lot about the game, not just about what I was doing within it. And I think from an early age, I wanted to be able to captain and be able to add value in that aspect. I think, my first World Cup as an under-19 player, Andy Balbirnie was our captain then. And he was someone I'd looked up to a lot growing up, as he was always a couple of years ahead of me. And then from that, moving into the national team and William Porterfield and what he did for Irish cricket, and then to get to meet him and again see how he operated and how passionate he was about what he did, for me, really made me want to be a captain and see could I add value in that sense as well.
And Sinead, for you, was it something that you thought you'd always do, or was it something that just kind of happened over time where, you obviously knew the team very well and you knew all your players?
Yeah, I'd say probably definitely the second one. For me, it was, I suppose I'd be quite a shy, or I wouldn't be the biggest talker on the team, so I was probably just happy to play and try and be the best player you could, and maybe I suppose coming towards the later stages of my career, or when I've been around the team a lot, was fortunate to be given the opportunity. A new manager came in Mick Bowen, and I suppose just having a chat with him, and for him getting to know the team, and I suppose I had experience of having been around a while, and probably just from speaking with him got a sense of how much the game kind of meant to me, and maybe might be a good person to step into that role, and someone new. And it was kind of, again, I'd gone from looking at captains before me, like Lindsay Davey been in the role, Noelle Healy, who's vice captain when I came in, who was great in that role as well. So, I learned a lot from the people that had gone before me as well. And, there's probably different styles to captaincy. And, I suppose I'm fortunate that Mick took a chance in that. And it was something I really, I suppose, grew into even still when I came into the role, and, really enjoyed it.
And for you, Pearl, obviously you've captained Raheny and Shell, so you have a lot of experience. Does it get easier the more you captain, or obviously as your team changes, is it always something that's constantly evolving?
Yeah, I think it does evolve every year. I look back at when I first became captain. We played with Raheny first, and then when we were merging with Shells, obviously a few things changed, the club changed, and then I was actually asked to be captain then, so I've been captain the last 6 years. But I definitely think it does change, the squad's changed. But I'd be quite similar to Sinead. I wouldn't just say something for the sake of it. I'd be quite quiet. I'd rather do my talking on the pitch, and if there's something that needs to be said, I'll say it.
Yeah.
I just always wanted to. I think doing your talking on the pitch, even as captain, is where you really should be doing it. And then look, as we all know as captains, there's a lot of stuff off the pitch that you have to deal with. I think for the most important thing for me when I did become captain is I didn't change from the Pearl who I was before. I'm quite passionate. I cared about it. I feel like I'm approachable, and I think that's the biggest thing for the girls, that they feel like if they have any issues on and off the pitch, they can come to it and you can support them. And look, that we're all there for the same goal, really. We all want to do well for the club that we're involved in. But yeah, I definitely think it evolves every year. There's something I learn every year, which is great. And look, I enjoy and I feel very privileged to be the captain of Shells at the moment as well.
And George, when you came back from Somerset to captain the Leinster Lightning in 2018, it was obviously a team that had been very successful. Was that in any way intimidating that you were coming in, captaining a few big names, and also the pressure to succeed is so big with Leinster in the interprovincials? Did that ever weigh down on you, or did you see that as a great challenge?
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed coming back and having such a great bunch of players around me in that Leinster Lightning team. I think it makes your job a little bit easier when there's that experience, around the group, in terms of having the likes of Andy Balbirnie and Kevin O'Brien, to talk to the young batters, and Barry McCarthy and Peter Chase, let's say, in the team as well, who can, lead a lot of that attack. It makes my job a little bit easier then, I suppose, that it's looking after, individual players or players you think might need a helping hand, and being able to focus a little bit as well on maybe more tactical elements of the game. And I know as well with the Leinster Lightning, there was a lot of pressure as well with, how much success we had, and trying to continue that every single year. And while the other teams were kind of clearly getting better year on year, but I think you got to enjoy that tag. I think the reason we've had it is because of the personnel and because of the performances we put in. So I think you got to relish the reason of why you are favourites, or why you are under pressure to win games, and then still try and perform as best as possible within that. And
within that, is it difficult when you have that tag, though? Does that make losing even harder?
A little bit, and almost to the point, I think there's times we probably weren't, you lose and suddenly it's a big thing, and you kind of reassess games in that way, where you're kind of wondering how it was possible, or where you went wrong with it. So I think there's a little bit of a challenge in terms of that, and trying to understand, when you have done enough, or when you need to change things for the next game. But I think the other thing that we were lucky with when I came back, and for that first few years, certainly was the fact we felt like we could win from anywhere because of our success in the previous years, and the amount of games that we'd kind of won where we probably didn't have the right to win. And I think that's something that does stick with players and within teams, and I think you can more so feed off that in situations where your backs are against the wall, but you have the belief that the game's still yours.
And then for you, Sinead, I suppose you obviously captain Dublin, but then going back to play with your club, you don't necessarily captain them. Do you find it difficult to step back, or do you enjoy the freedom of just being able to play again?
Yeah, I probably do enjoy that freedom. And I suppose, like, to a certain extent, when you're not around the club team, for a huge amount of time throughout the season, I think it nearly feels like the girls that are there need to take ownership and take responsibility and lead that. So I'm more than happy to kind of step away and make sure that that's happening, because every team needs that sort of, bond that comes from throughout the season, and girls kind of going on that journey together. So, when we kind of step back in from the county scene, it's sporadically through the season or at the end of the season, as it was this year. And it was great to get such a long run with the team. It's probably the longest run I've had with the club team in 10 years nearly, I'd say. So really enjoyed that. But it was nice to see the leadership that the girls had created themselves and the kind of ownership that they'd taken of it. Especially because we'd had a tough couple of years. We'd come down from senior and we'd kind of lost direction and lost motivation probably a little bit, and kind of lost a few girls along the way as well. So to see that kind of come back and have that great run was really nice to kind of see it through from that different perspective. And obviously you're trying to take the things that you do when you're with the county and when you're in that captaincy role of offering support, but you're a little bit step back, and it's kind of great to see other people sort of take that on as well.
And then for you, Pearl, obviously the women's game has grown massively in the last couple of years. Do you find that's a challenge for you and your team, or do you think it's a brilliant opportunity?
No, I think it's a brilliant opportunity. 2 or 3 years ago, we came under the one banner shell. So, for a long time, we were like a separate identity to the men's team. Now we're all under the one banner. I've spoken many interviews the last few weeks. We've went from 40 or 50 people in the crowd to a few hundred now. So, we see that as brilliant opportunities. We've been trying so much over the last years to develop the Women's National League, to grow those opportunities. And, with TG Carter and stuff coming in, that has only helped the game. So we all loved that. We would have bit your hand off if you'd have said that was a few years ago. So, look, it brings its own challenges then. The competition within the squad is getting better and better, which is a good thing. For me as captain then, it's, I've always been that type of player of, 11 that plays every Saturday, and for me as captain it's worrying about the 8 or 9 who are not playing, and just different challenges like that come along with it. But definitely an opportunity, and I suppose the last game of the season you would have seen the dramatics of that. That was probably the best promotion the league could have got, so long may it continue.
And with that, taking that last day into the season in mind, during all the pandemonium, I suppose, how hard is it for you as a captain to try and almost keep everyone at a very level playing field when you're on the pitch, and not let the other game and what was happening in the other game affect you? Yeah,
look, that was probably the first time I've experienced it. That it's probably genuinely the craziest night in football I've ever experienced. We were obviously 2-0 up in the first half, and I had no idea if Peamount had went 2-0 up, and it was Jess Sue who came running over to me, and she was like, it's 2-2, and I was kind of trying to calm her down because it was near first half. So I was thinking, there's another half to go, Peamount will come back here, don't be worried about them. And then it was like everybody at half-time was afraid to ask to score in the other game, but we kind of knew. And then when we went back out, we went 3-0 up, then it was 3-1. But then all of a sudden, the crowd had erupted in Tolka, and I was thinking, what's going on here? Are Galway actually winning? Because people were standing on the seats, and I was trying to calm myself and then try to calm everybody else, because I could see the players' heads were going. And then obviously Wexford pull a goal back to make it 3-2. But then I'll never forget this roar as long as I live. It was another roar from our crowd, and I looked at our bench to say, what's going on? And someone put up a 4 and a 2 to Galway. And as I said, I had to remain calm then, although I knew I was probably 5 minutes away from being a league champion. We'd been runners up the last 3 or 4 years. So that was a learning curve for me, that I had to calm my own head. Inside, I was going crazy, but I was trying to calm everybody else. I turned to Chloe Mustaki at one stage and I said, we're 5 minutes away from being champions here. Get the energy levels up. And her face just dropped, and I was thinking in that moment, Jesus, should I have told her? But look, I think, it was the learning curve for me. It was something none of us have ever experienced. But I was trying to calm them down the last few minutes, and thank God we got over the line.
Yeah, amazing. That was such a game. And then, George, for you, obviously in cricket in particular, decisions made by the captain are quite closely scrutinised. What would be the worst decision you think you've made as a captain, and what did you learn from it?
I think we had a bit of a challenge a few years ago, and it was probably selection choice for the Leinster Lightning, where I think it was maybe the first or second game of the season, and the makeup of our squad, we probably were a batter too heavy, but every single one of the batters had played international cricket, and so we weren't really sure whether to drop the international batter or to drop the seamer who probably hadn't played a whole lot of interprovincial cricket at the time, and balance of the team would have suggested we should have picked the seamer and made the tough call. We didn't, and ended up paying for it, and ended up with our backs against the wall in that game. And for me, it would have been a really difficult decision to have that chat with whatever player that was, who would have missed out. But I think it was for the best of the team, and I think pretty quickly realised that it needed to be a little bit more clear and cutthroat if needed to be in those discussions with the selection committee, and made sure that we were aware of what team we were going with. Because in the end, I think whoever we were playing against might have got 400 or 500 after day 1, day 2, and the game was gone from us. So it was a pretty tough one for me. But again, I think you learn a lot from those mistakes.
Yeah.
And Sinead, probably the one thing that all three of you guys will have had to have encountered at some stage is that tricky player that's fast on talent, but sometimes mightn't have the right work ethic or something like that. How do you go about, as a captain, trying to player manage that player to get the best out of them, even though sometimes their work ethic might be lacking or something like that? How can you try and get them to produce the best?
I think every player I've played has been an angel. I don't know what you're talking about, but I know. Look, in fairness, I do have to credit the girls I've been involved with in my time in captaincy. You know, they've made my job very easy for the most part. But you know, I suppose it's trying to understand. Like, I suppose when I came into the role, it was what dawned on me was probably understanding how much of a HR role it was in a way to kind of, you know, I suppose try and keep everyone balanced and happy, and you're never going to do that in a squad environment. It's impossible. There's always going to be someone who thinks they should be playing or not, or you know, has gone through tough times or whatever. So I think it's just trying to understand their perspective and their motivations and kind of what they're coming from, and trying to, you know, align that with the team motivations and you know, where you're trying to go on that journey. And you know, for someone that might be not playing when they think they should be playing, but ultimately it's, you know, trying to see the perspective of, you know, what does the team need to look like for this day against the opposition we're going for, or you know, who you're in competition with. It's ultimately about trying to get the best for the team, and sometimes, you know, it's not what an individual player wants to hear, but from a team perspective, like, you know, I've played with some players who are just unbelievable, you know, teammates and squad mates, and they may see very little game time, but what they actually bring to the squad is huge in terms of their attitude, their mentality. And I think it's trying to hit that home to people and really kind of credit people for that and reward them for that as well, in terms of, you know, what you can bring to something, even though, you know, you might not be getting as much game time as you want, or vice versa. If someone's frustrated with someone because they feel they are and their attitude's not right, it's trying to, you know, I guess, talk to that person and kind of make them aware of the kind of maybe perception that people have, and you know, is that really the kind of teammate you want to be to someone who's absolutely bursting themselves on the other side of the room?
And you mentioned earlier, Pearl, that the first, when you're getting to a match day, the people you're looking out for more are the people that haven't been selected. How do you go about kind of, I suppose, filling them up with confidence and trying to get them to continue, as Sinead says, to really buy into that team spirit?
Yeah, like I've always said it, and I said it the night we won, and we won the league. We didn't win it with the 11 that played that night, or the 11 that played throughout the season. There's a squad of 2022 there, and I always say to the girls, we always have kind of a little chat. Like, if those girls' intensity drops in training, you know, we're not developing, we're not, I suppose, pushing ourselves to the limit. So I've used credit, and as I said, throughout a whole season, you know, the girls who are on the bench are my biggest concern, because I know the 10 other players beside me who are playing are happy. So it's more focusing on the other girls, and it's little simple things, you know. I would meet them for a coffee the odd time, as Sinead said. Let them rant, that's what you're there for. And then always bring it back to the team and why they're involved, and, you know, that they can play a part. They mightn't be playing as much as they want, but, you know, when you're on the pitch or off, you can play a massive role. So I just think it's making everybody feel valued and feel important, no matter what their game time is. So for me, it's just giving them time. And as I said, I sit in the dressing room and the team's called out, and, you know, the players that are not playing are the ones I'm thinking about, and when can I next chat to them, when can I next, you know, get the feel from them and see how they are. And that's how I think, you know, we've a great family environment at Shells, and as I said, we were only champions because of the 2022, not just the 11 that played that night. So it's a massive thing for me.
And then, George, on that kind of topic, cricket's probably known as quite an individual team sport. So obviously, if you're playing in a football or soccer, you have your team around you. In cricket, sometimes you can feel a little bit on your own. How, as captain, do you have to manage those players that maybe aren't playing and it is quite individual?
Yeah, look, I think what Pearl said there as well about making people feel valued is incredibly important. I know cricket, obviously there's less team cohesion in terms of, you know, you're not running off one another. You don't have to see how others are playing it as well. But A lot of the time it's making sure that those guys who turn up on the day are in a good headspace and are happy to be doing what they're doing. And a lot of the times, sometimes it is just a really simple call, a coffee, a walk around the boundary, whatever it is, just understanding how everyone is going. If there's anyone that you need to get around, if there's anyone that the coach needs to have a chat to about what's going on. And sometimes it's their cricket, sometimes it's not. And I think that side of things is probably a little bit more important, to make sure everyone's in a good headspace. And maybe if they're not 100%, at least they understand that maybe you're aware of that. Because again, I think there's a certain amount you can do as a captain or a coach within cricket, but I think a huge amount of it comes down to the players and where they're at the time with their own skills and what they can add to the team. So I think, the best thing I can say is trying to just be aware of everyone within the group and make sure that, I suppose, you care about them as people first and then cricketers second.
And then kind of on that topic again, Sinead, I suppose you've got a group of players, but then you also have a management team. And as the captain, you tend to kind of sometimes be the go-between. To you, which relationship is more important, the one with your management team or the one with your players?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I suppose, look, you're not the only one that, the management, I suppose, may come through you for certain things, but we'd have a leadership group and you kind of lean on them for different things and you get different opinions. And I think that's, probably one of the important roles is to listen, to bring in as many voices as you can to hear the different perspectives. And then ultimately you may be the one making a call on something at the end of it. And that may be the go-between to management as to kind of feed that back. Like it is really important to make sure that, management understand how players are feeling, maybe how one or two players that don't feel comfortable approaching management maybe want to feed back something or that you can kind of give a heads up for, someone just to keep an eye on that they may need a bit of a boost or something like that. But I suppose amongst the players, like, as we've just been speaking about, it's trying to get that culture amongst the team really strong, that, you've built that bond and ultimately in a team sport, like when the final whistle goes, you just want to celebrate with your teammates, if you've won the game, or you want to commiserate with them if you haven't. So I think that's really special, and especially, if football or your sport isn't going well for you, to have that to fall back on is great. So to build that really strong team environment and to try and, I suppose, make sure that people are able to perform to the best within it and really enjoying it, because times when results aren't going your way, you still actually want to be able to say we've created an environment here where we can lean on each other, we can still try and improve, we can go after the next game. I suppose the team one probably more important, because like the management, I suppose it'll come naturally, but maybe you need to work at it a bit more with players.
And we're now going to just have a short break, and we're going to catch up on all the latest news around Cricket Leinster. Players, it's time to get registered for the 2022 season. And over 2,500 players have already registered, and all you need to do is follow the link on the screen now. And remember, registration includes full personal accident insurance and a contribution to the Cricket Leinster Disability Cricket Programme.
You may be interested to hear that player numbers grew by 35% overall in 2021, and clubs have recovered from the most acute impacts of COVID-19. It is very encouraging to see the growth in youth numbers, and with over 2,200 kids registered in 2021 versus 850 in 2020. The women's game is also showing encouraging growth trends, with almost 1,000 registered female players in 2021 and more clubs starting to embrace a full women's programme. Many for the first time, like Balbriggan in Fingal and Knockharley in Meath. Other clubs are re-establishing and expanding their female programmes, like Terenure, which now has 2 women's teams, and Railway Union also. Isabel Joyce is clearly doing a great job as Cricket Leinster Women's and Girls Development Officer.
The 2022 season is approaching us thick and fast, and the group stages have been made for all of the men's and women's leagues. There will be 160 teams competing in the open divisions of Cricket Leinster, spanning over 20 divisions. The former Division 3 has now been rebranded as the Second 11 Premier League and has been sponsored by Sports Hub alongside Division 4, while Buakit has remained title sponsor of the Premier League and Championship divisions. The Alan Murray Cup is also back and is returning for the first time since 2019, alongside T20 competitions such as the Tulane Cup, YMCA Salver and others will be played on weekends.
The women's structure will once again have 4 divisions since the expansion to that format was made in 2020, and we are delighted to see that there are 4 more teams involved this season than last year. The 4 main divisions will operate in a T20 league, while the Pilkington Plate, which is the main 50-over competition, will comprise of 2 groups of 5 teams.
And that was all the latest news around Cricket Leinster. So coming near the end of the podcast, George, I'd just like to ask you, obviously playing abroad during Christmas time this year with Ireland, what was that like? It was the first time Ireland have played across, and you were over in America and then on to the Caribbean in January. Was that difficult being away from home at that time?
I suppose I was lucky in a couple of senses. The first, my family was away as well from Dublin, so I didn't miss the big Christmas here. And I think that group of guys we have with the Irish team, there's some of my closest friends in that group, and really, really lovely bunch who I love being away with and really quite enjoy. So we actually had a lovely time for a few days. There was a few issues after that which caused some problems, but I think in terms of COVID, but it was actually really, really enjoyable, I think, with that group. And I suppose that's why I'm glad that a lot of what we do is with a really nice bunch of guys that you get on with, and it means you can spend, Christmas with them or their extended families and enjoy it as we did.
Nice. And for you, Sinead, I suppose a different question is, obviously you're working full-time as well as playing. So how do you manage that, staying fit, working and playing football?
I'm probably less productive in the winter when it comes around to actually having a bit more downtime. So yeah, I think it probably just gives you focus, and you get used. I've been doing it since as long as I can remember. So, gone through, I suppose, work from college, nearly playing into a working environment as well. So doing exams, the whole lot of it, you kind of just get used to having a routine around it. And I suppose actually, as I said, kind of probably keeps me more productive in work, because I know I've got to be out the door at 6 or that type of thing. I suppose working from home's probably been nice over the last couple of years. It's given that extra flexibility around organising your meals and your training gear and getting out the door on time. So back to a hybrid environment will be interesting to see how that goes. But I think in general you get used to it, and my job are pretty good around busy times to kind of manage it if you need a bit of leeway and that type of thing. I know the All Ireland that we played in December, that's a crazy busy time of the year for us usually. So that was interesting, and particularly I got injured. Pulled hamstring in our I think it was our semi-final, so I was trying to get back for that, and I remember being in town doing physio sessions at 7 a.m. into the office, and then into an oxygen chamber at a sort of 5-6 o'clock in the evening. So they were pretty intense, and it was kind of good for me to be able to have my employer just kind of be flexible on that and make sure if there was stuff that I needed to kind of get off the desk if it was possible, they'd kind of work around that. So yeah, just I suppose keep talking to who's shouting the loudest at the time. Sometimes it's the football, and sometimes it's work.
And Pearl, for yourself, alongside playing for Shells, you're obviously working in the FAI at the moment. You want to just tell us a little bit about the work you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm currently Women's Football Programme Coordinator, so I would develop a lot of the programmes that we roll around the country with clubs and leagues, so trying to grow participation or retaining players. So one of the brand new initiatives we would have brought in last year was the UEFA Disney Playmakers, so it's for young girls around 5 to 8 year olds, so we're just trying to get them into the sport a lot younger. You look around other sports, they're getting girls in a lot younger, and we're kind of losing them to other sports with that challenge. So we had to come up with something, and in fairness, UEFA came up with a brilliant thing. So it's more around the fundamental movements. It's through Disney movies, so you can imagine young girls that age group. The sessions are based around films. So last year was Incredibles, this year is Moana, so the girls will love it. And then obviously the coaches that we bring in obviously have to be a specific type. So less around that coaching badges and more around personalities and getting, it's kind of organised chaos when you look at that age group. And I suppose just making sure when the girls come in at that age group that they have a positive experience, and that will hopefully lead to lifelong participation. But I'm very lucky, I work in the FAI, I play football, so it's been nice to be able to balance both. But look, I suppose every single day in my life now is women's football, whether I'm playing with Shells or I'm in work, and I feel very lucky to be in that position.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, guys. So it's been an absolutely brilliant first episode. Thank you all for coming and joining us, and thank you all for joining us as well. So Pearl, George and Sinead, thank you very much for today.
Thanks for having us.
And that concludes the first episode of the Inside Edge podcast, the new podcast for Cricket Leinster. And we'd really like you to let us know how you thought the first episode went by social media at Cricket Leinster. And of course, let us know who you'd like us to get in touch with and what topics you'd like to see us discussed. But for myself and Kate, for now, it's goodbye.